Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the DLC Drop podcast. Today my guest is Robert M. Atkins. He's a game developer who has touched incredible titles including Doom, Counter-Strike, and many others. We're going to get into the game development side of his career, but we're also going to talk about empowering people through esports. Tune in. Let's go talk to Robert. Drop in the untold stories of industry leaders, influencers, and insights on future innovation. I'm John Davidson, and this is the DLC Drop podcast. All right, Robert M. Atkins, thank you so much for joining me today on the DLC Drop podcast. It's a pleasure to have you.
It's awesome to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely. So we were introduced by our producer, Sia, and I just love everything you've been working on. And you're one of those people who you've done a lot of things that I'm aware of. I just didn't know it was you and your team doing it. And so I'm really excited to have you today. Today, you've been a game developer. You've won an Industry Icon Award. You're somebody who's wrote the original art curriculum at the SMU Guildhall. You've done a lot of things in the game and the esports space. Why don't you take us through where that journey started for you and how it got you to where you are today?
Yeah, I appreciate that. So it's funny because someone made a post today or yesterday. It was like a picture of Doom. And it was like, where does this game stand on its relevance in the industry?
Yeah.
And for me, it was the beginning of my career. My best friend was actually one of the founders of id Software, and I got to go visit their office just on for personal reasons. I just wanted to see where my friend worked. He had moved to the Dallas area, and I was still back in Louisiana going to college. And so I got to see Doom for the first time. And it was like incredible. It was like, and I kept because I was studying art, I guess the closest thing that I could connect it to, I just kept saying it over and over is, this is the Renaissance.
Yeah.
This is the Renaissance. This is the Renaissance. That moment was like life-changing or an industry-changing because it was like the fidelity, the fact that it was almost 3D and it was like the number of pixels and all the color, all these things and the way they were even creating it. They were making sculptures, and Adrian was making the Space Marine. He was making the Cyber Demon. They were making these sculptures. They were making these things, and it felt like a whole new level of development that I was like, and I just, after I said this is the Renaissance, I said, I want in.
Yeah.
And it was like, that was the kind of moment where I moved to Dallas and I became the marketing director at Apogee 3D Realms, worked on Duke Nukem, 96 left, when the Duke Nukem ship, worked on Quake, worked on Sin, Heavy Metal with Kevin Eastman, just got really started my first company at Ritual. It was sort of really fast roll once I got in. It was, fast. It was 3 years before I started my first company. And even when I was at Apogee, I kept asking my boss, hey, I know I'm good at the marketing stuff. I know I'm good at designing boxes and logos and writing copy and all this stuff, but I want to make the games, man. I really want to make stuff.
Absolutely.
And he's like, no, you're good at your job. And so I was the only one with a Mac. I mean, like everyone else had a PC, right? Because that's how we were making PC games. So I brought my own computer in, and I sat at lunch, and I would just do pixel art. And that was so I just kind of one of those lessons I teach at SMU even is don't just do what your boss tells you to do. Do what's in your heart and push your own self forward. And that was sort of in a nutshell kind of who I am.
That's incredible. I love what you said at the end there where you're talking about, your boss said to do this, but what your passion and your natural gifts lended you to was actually working on the game. That's something that I can relate to. I've worked with a big production company called PRG, Production Resource Group, and they've empowered me so much to develop business in whatever way I naturally do it.
Yeah.
And so previously I was at GameStop, as a lot of people know, and there's a lot of restrictions. It's because they're a public company. It's, I don't mind. I get it. They don't want me to say something that, they're going to go to digital. They're not. And then the stock price goes down and I get fired. I wouldn't have wanted that either. But I remember going to PRG and I said, hey, I get approached for a lot of speaking opportunities, panels, keynotes, podcasts, etc. I said, what's my limitation or what do I need to be careful not to do? And my boss said, your filter is what makes you most successful.
Yeah.
And I just, in that moment I was like, awesome.
Yeah.
Because it's like, this is a company, and I think this is what you're saying, is basically says, John, this is what your goal is, to bring in new business. But however you uniquely do that with your unique skills, passion, ability, go get it.
Absolutely.
And there's somebody else who is just as effective or more than I am doing it a completely different way, and they embrace that.
Yeah.
So what did that do for you when, I guess, let me back up. Were you empowered, or did you have to fight through that to become empowered and be able to work on those games?
Yeah. So, I guess when it came to 3D Realms and Apogee, our bosses kind of didn't even have an office in the building, so we were kind of the inmates running the asylum,
Sure.
and they did empower us. My boss did say, that's your job. You make the decision. When it came to certain things, and there were times when I'd be fighting with the publisher about the copy that I wrote, and it was like, and they're like, the publisher's saying, we're going to be in front of a Senate hearing and they're going to be telling, it's like, we can't have that copy. And I'm like, I wrote that, it's going on the box, it's like, it's what you do in the game. And it was, so we were very much, some of it was we were young and ego, there was some ego there. And so we made a lot of mistakes because of it.
That's what ego will do.
Yeah, that's what ego does, right? And not knowing,
Right.
and so I've always been part of, I guess, developer-owned companies. I guess, Apogee was that way, 3D Realms was that way. We owned Ritual, and we were kind of I would call us an art house where we empowered people to create. We didn't dictate what they created. A lot of times we said, okay, here's the product, here's the IP. What's the experience we're going to bring? And even with big IPs, we were able to, like Heavy Metal, working with Kevin Eastman on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. He originally wanted us to make the Heavy Metal 2000 movie story, and we're like, that story sucks, and we had to tell Kevin, like, well, we'd like to do, like, 50 years later, like, do the sequel. And so we were, because our studio we made great product, or at least people well received from the fans. I don't know if it was commercially successful or not, but we were given a lot of trust. And so really, and that comes back to what you're saying, is you have instincts and you have talent. You want to be in a position where people trust you and empower you. And that's really, that really does matter for even especially people looking for jobs out there, is like, and I believe, like, if you just did what your boss asked you to do, or how he told you to do it, it may be like, that's half of your job, really. The other half is like trying to figure out new ways of doing stuff. And I think it comes down, you mentioned GameStop, it comes down to there's no real innovation taking place within large publicly traded companies. Yeah. Most of that innovation takes place in small, boutique, up and coming, entrepreneurial driven organizations. And that's because we can move faster, we are more agile, we have to be successful, necessity, right? And so I think that's a lot of what I talk about. That's a lot how I approach my staff, approach people, is ownership of what they're doing really matters, and feeling ownership over it. And we had that even from the beginning with 3D Realms. We had ownership, but we also had self-awareness that we wanted more.
Yeah, so as somebody who's built and led teams, you talk about ownership. What are some ways that you've successfully been able to enable your team to gain ownership? I know something that I've experienced. I worked for a small company one time, and we were hiring new employees. It was so difficult for people to feel like their job was more than a job. Me and my business partner, he was the founder, I was employee number one. That job was our identity. Yeah. We felt all the ownership and we were all in. But to hire somebody and you want them to feel about the company like you do, to have the passion to, put in the extra hours because it matters. But to them, oftentimes, it's just, nope, that's my paycheck. I'm logging out. I'm going home to do whatever I really want to do with my life.
Yeah.
Good luck with the business. Have you found ways, whether it's, maybe it's just finding the right people, or maybe it's instilling that ownership into people some way?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think there's probably 50 different answers. For me, some of the ways that I that it worked for us, and at times was we sat right next to our team. We were on. Well, I say, I'm in the trenches.
Right.
So I'm there working next to the team. I'm in there and doing the same thing. I would never ask someone to do something I wouldn't be willing to do myself.
Right.
And the other thing I was always doing is, if there was a job that wasn't that fun or that wasn't that great, like an example would be UI. Not everybody UI is its own beast when it comes to things. I would take on that role as the UI designer, because I came from a marketing background. So I would do most of the games I've ever worked on. I did the UI, UX, HUD design. And I would always I would do all the layout, functionality, get it working, make sure and a lot of times it was my final art, but if it needed a real art pass, I would hand it off to a more talented guy, because I would rather my artists that I had on my team be working on making other things look badass, you know? And so like the UI is like, it's not that fun, but it's really important, right?
Yes.
But it was like I did that, and one example would be, kind of proud of this because it's still being used today, is when we were working on Counter-Strike Condition Zero, and then we put Counter-Strike on the Xbox, so 2 different products. But so it was the first time that Counter-Strike at the time was the #1 multiplayer game in the world. We put it on the Xbox in 2003, so it was the first time it ever went to the console, and it was a big deal. Well, back in Counter-Strike originally, the way you had to do weapon selection is it had a table, or you had to like arrow down and arrow up to be able to select a weapon. I designed the Retinal UI of weapon selection, and a guy named Squirrel was the programmer. He implemented it, and we did that because of hardware constraints. So the controller and being able to select your weapons faster we needed a solution that didn't involve the up and down table. And so we came up with that, and then put it on the Xbox, and then that UI design actually became the standard for Counter-Strike, for how you select your weapons and things. So sometimes even UI makes an impact, but that's just an example of empowering your team. But and then the other thing is, I would say, when it comes to is just let them do their job, man. I mean, I wish I had some magic sauce. The thing I would do is I wouldn't get in their way. I would hire young people. A lot of times I would hire industry vets, but I mostly hired young people out of college. And I was like, I set them next to a mentor, someone. I would ask them, what is it that you want? Like, where's your career? Like, what is your goal? Like first year, if you could do anything, what would it be? Yeah. And whatever they would say is, I would go, okay, I'm going to sit you next to my most talented or most experienced person who does that, and I want you to learn everything you can. Right. And so I would do that. Mentorship was huge when it comes to the growth of young people and empowering people. And the other thing was, I wouldn't over-direct. I spent most of my direction in concept art. So I had a concept art team, and I would mostly spend my time there. And just like anything, if I handed a concept to someone, I was like, well, this is what we're thinking, but I want you to, if you have ideas around this, I would want you to, make tweaks, work on it, do, your thing. If you have other ideas, present them. So I would always allowing the individual who was working on assets to have more ownership over that. And the other thing I was really good about was I didn't believe in waste. If someone built something, worked on it, and made it happen, 9 times out of 10 it was the final product. And and it was like, I don't want to spend a lot of time making the same asset or the same deliverable multiple times. Let's get it right the first time. Right.
I think what you said there is, I wrote down the word freedom. With that's something that develops ownership, is when somebody is there's a term in with bosses, strong and wrong, right? And it's like, just because you said it loud doesn't make it right. But I've been in positions where I felt stifled, and it was because either my boss, I thought I was so passionate about this idea and they didn't want to do it, or they just didn't see the vision, and I was like, we got to do this, and they just didn't get it for whatever reason. And my response there was, then I stopped caring. Yeah. Right? Because I cared so much and I put so much into it. And so to get myself to, I guess maybe to make the disappointment less or the hurt less, my reaction was, okay, I don't care, I'm just going to mail it in. But to your point, you said not over directing folks, is when you guide people, especially young people, right? Young people have so much passion, so much energy.
Yeah.
And a lot of times leadership and teamwork isn't so much saying, do this exact thing that I would do myself, but I just don't have the time to do. But instead saying, okay, this energy that you've got here, let me direct it. Let me put you, go there.
Yeah.
And just go and unleash them. And when people do that and they thrive, they gain ownership because they're happy and they're doing what they're meant to do.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
a great way to put it.
you give them a problem and let them come up with a solution, or let them offer up the solutions. And you know, one of the things that we did, I wasn't at my company. I wasn't happy with the leadership, and I was on the leadership team. Meaning, I wasn't happy with what we were doing. I wasn't happy with the culture that we were creating.
Yeah.
I wasn't happy with a lot of things, and it sucks when the guy who's at the top is not happy. That means something's wrong, something's broken.
True.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that they have to be happy, but it's like, I'm saying there's a problem. You know, we have to address this. But I didn't. If I was smart enough to come up with the answer, then I would just address it.
Sure.
So I came up with at the time what we called the tribal council. So it was like we called ourselves a tribe at our company, and we had sort of this tribe mentality. And I put together a council of leaders from each of the departments and some other departments, and we came together and we met weekly. And in that room with those leaders from those departments who were representative of the team, we weren't dictating down to them. We were allowing in that room of leaders to come up with ideas, and the buy-in was there, and we took votes on everything, you know, and then. It wasn't a CEO or a boss or whatever title telling people, hey, go do this. I know you're not into, I know you don't believe in this as a manager, but go tell the team that that's what's happening. It was none of that BS. It was like the manager or the leaders in those departments were there deciding on the decisions that were they ultimately had to stand behind and believe in when they went back to their teams.
Right.
And it changed the dynamic of the studio.
Wow.
So you want to have representation of your teams making the decisions, and that was really important.
That is important. I think, too, I mean, any big company, one of the challenges is silos, right? People not working together. Another challenge is giving everybody not just representation, but equal representation, having a seat at the table. I've been a part of some large organizations where, you know, one group had all the say and another group had no power whatsoever.
Yeah, they were the worker bees, right?
Right. So it's like, great, why do I even show up to these meetings? Or I completely have a different philosophy than so-and-so over here in a different group, but it doesn't matter, and we can't even have a discussion because they are, they're given all the power for whatever reason.
Yeah.
What were some of the things that enabled you to provide equal power to the different groups of this tribe?
I just think hiring the right people. Even though I've been in leadership roles, it was always, I got pushed into them. I wasn't necessarily interested in being a president or a CEO even, or any of those things. Because of the respect of the team, just because of how I guess, maintained myself, how I delivered, I was seen as a leader, and I think that's probably part of it too. Is that you have other people who are it's not hey, I'm the best programmer, so I'm the lead programmer. That's a bullshit thought. I would rather my best programmer not be a lead in managing people, because they're more valuable as a programmer, not necessarily they may not even want to be in that position.
Sure.
And so finding the right people who are actually good at communicating, good at being a leader, people respect and value their insights is really important, because there's trust. You build that trust.
Interesting.
And so I think that's part of it. And you lose that quickly if you keep dropping the ball, or you're not there, and you can lose that quite quickly. And it's just hard, man. I mean, the industry is just because it's, and this is what I'm hearing from you too. It's like we're passion driven. people, and we want to work on stuff that we're passionate about.
Right.
That can be taken advantage of, right? And so we have to be guarded in some ways, but we also are entrepreneurial at heart. And that's another thing I can tell about you, John, is entrepreneurs at heart are people who want to like try things and break. We're not like just do it this way because we know it works. Like we want to try. We want to trailblaze. Hey, let's try some stuff. Let's see what else works.
Right.
That's working today doesn't mean it's going to work tomorrow.
True.
And so I think that's part of having been through so many games and so many technology cycles. Mm-hmm. We are comfortable in change because every 5 years, new tech, new something, new platforms, I started at Apogee. It was digital bulletin boards, right? The bulletin boards we were selling direct. I was doing direct mailers to people, and then it became all retail. If you're not in Walmart and you don't have the big box, and then the big box had to go away because we need to make more room for more products on the shelf, and then it became like Valve's like, piracy sucks, and why do we have to sell through Walmart? Like, let's create digital downloads. I mean, and then it became, console market became, there wasn't these barriers went away, and then mobile. I mean, our technology and the innovation and like that doesn't come from people who are just doing it the same way. Or thinking the same way, or even doing what they're told, because everyone told Valve that wasn't going to work. That wasn't a good idea.
Yeah, and it was a good idea.
It was not only was it was one of the most like the industry is completely digital download almost now. It's like Walmart's not even, it's a non-factor.
Yeah.
And I was proud because Half-Life 2 kind of launched Steam. That was the big deal, and then Valve asked us to take the Half-Life 2 engine and make a game with it. So we relaunched the Sin franchise, and we were the number 27th product on Steam.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's like, that's pretty cool, man. I like this. They sent a plaque for and everything. So I was like, I think we were maybe the second third-party product that was ever on Steam.
Wow.
Yeah, so I've been through the technology changes. And that to me is the exciting part of the industry, is like, making the same old stuff isn't that exciting.
Right.
And it just comes down to again, freedom, letting people, indie development, giving them the tools, giving them Unity and Unreal, and saying go nuts.
Yeah, well, let's get into that a little bit. What, talking about innovation in gaming, what do you see as what's coming next, or that's about to be the next trend in whatever way you want to take that in the gaming industry?
Well, I having been through some of these cycles of like, esports, I think is really freaking cool, man.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I've been the guy for years watching it, like almost do it. I was there when, John Carmack's Ferrari was the prize for, and Frag, I think it was Frag. Was it Frag? That was, I can't remember the player. There was a player who was an esports player. He's like, he won his John Carmack's Ferrari at E3 through a tournament. Yeah. And I was there, and, I was there through a lot of times. It just never seemed like it took off. Like, it seems like it was struggling. But now, it's like the last few years, it's like, oh my Lord, it's like, this is it. It's just like Doom is the, kind of the Renaissance game for me. Right. I think esports is that next big thing, and it makes so much sense. As a traditional sports guy, I love watching John McEnroe play tennis because I wanted to get better at playing tennis. Right. I love watching the Lakers play basketball because I wanted to, like, I'd go out in the backyard after the game and go shoot hoops. Kids aren't watching basketball. They're not watching traditional things. They're watching gaming. I think it was the first quarter of 2020. There was 3 billion hours just on Twitch alone being watched. Yeah. And that is where it's at. I mean, that's the audience. And the thing that people haven't figured out yet. The teams are there. The infrastructure's there. The branding is starting to get there. And there's all this money. Yeah. But the opportunity, I think, is how do you monetize, or how do you bring really valuable digital experiences or something cool to that audience that's engaged? I think that's a really great opportunity.
Yeah, the way I see, I'm in this world, and so I love talking shop about esports marketing, the future of it. What I see in the U.S. specifically, the rise the last 4 or 5 years was that traditional television, brands, agencies that supported them, and traditional sports all saw that young people are not engaging with them. Viewership participation is declining, and they're not getting any young people, basically. And so they say, well, what are young people doing? They're all playing video games. Well, one thing I learned at GameStop, it's super hard for a brand to integrate organically into a non-competitive game. And so my job at GameStop when I first started was non-endemic partnerships. So essentially, let's say Doritos, Dr. Pepper, whoever wants to reach gamers, hey, we've got this massive loyalty program, we've got, all these emails going out, we've got all these channels, etc. Well, the problem was, I remember talking to Dr. Pepper one day. He said, John, it's really hard to sponsor a 2-week campaign for one game and then go and do a 2-week campaign for the other game. I said, okay, yeah, I get that. Well, what if you sponsored a season, right? Like Q4, holiday, all the games come out, all the shopping is going on for mom and dad need to find the game and they need a physical gift to give their kid. We get tons of people in store for that. Well, John, the problem there is half of your games we don't want to be associated with, right? Red blood or whatever the issue is. Well, when you look at esports, these brands, these agencies, these teams, they see familiar, sponsorable assets. And so they see jerseys, venues, content, teams, leagues, all these places where they say, oh, this is ripe for logo placement. Then what they figure out is the consumer is a little bit more skeptical and more requiring, my opinion is you need to enhance the experiences of the community to be embraced. But I absolutely believe that esports is the future of entertainment. What I'm seeing as a major challenge is the monetization.
That's right.
And you've got the leagues are owned by the publishers, and the publishers are making a ton of money because they can make money a whole sorts of different ways, right? Activision, for example, can make a ton of money selling the game of Call of Duty and could lose money operating Call of Duty League, and it's a marketing loss leader that ultimately results in more sales of the game, because when Scump is yelling at the opposition and doing choke signs, which is amazing, so-and-so at home who just plays the campaign is like, yeah, that's awesome. Cool, I'm just going to play the campaign, right? So I see, how do we get the teams to make money is the biggest thing I think. Because we don't have, in traditional sports, you have media rights deals because it's on programmatic television.
Yeah.
Streaming online is much more difficult for media rights because so much of it can be pirated. It's not easy to program it. And so currently sponsorship revenue is the number one source of revenue. And then you have a bunch of teams that aren't fulfilling sponsorships to get ROI to the partners, which is terrifying because if you're a brand and you're sponsoring my team and you're not getting ROI, you're going to take those dollars away the next time you get the chance.
Absolutely.
Right? So I'm curious. I've talked to a number of people about, hey, maybe there's a subscription opportunity that, enables teams to monetize, skins or other digital, items, things of that nature. I'm just curious. No one's figured it out yet. Are there any thought starters in your mind of like, how can this space be better monetized?
I wish I had some wand or golden ball to look into because it's a real challenge. I mean, you're wearing a complexity T-shirt, and we've done great things with complexity, and we get a lot of eyeballs. And it's like, okay, why can't we get big brands to connect with Race the World First? Right. And there's an example, and I think because it isn't necessarily the team's fault or the product's fault. I think there's just some really challenging gates. An example would be Blizzard. Blizzard won't allow you to, and I love Blizzard. I play World of Warcraft with my wife every night. Yeah. But they won't allow you to mention other games during their events. Right. And so you can't go to other games who would love to connect to that crowd. So that's one problem. So then you have Twitch, who is owned by Amazon, who's like, okay, you can't have click-throughs, or you can't have certain types of products that are being advertised during these events too. So you're limiting potentially some of the bigger brands. And I think those are challenging when you have the publisher and you have the primary streaming platform. that's a really challenging issue. Now you have other streaming platforms that are trying to come up that are trying to address some of those things that don't necessarily have some of those gates, and also
data.
I was about to say more data is being shared, more analytics around those things. I think that's part of the hurdles that you have to figure out. And I think unfortunately, and it's still true. I think 5 years ago, one thing happened was Fortnite. Fortnite really changed a lot of, even when I was out pitching my company. Yeah. People are like, games make, it's 150 billion a year compared to movies and film and all these things. They still didn't get it. Now it's like, okay, stream. Now they're watching their kids. Everyone on the planet has heard of Fortnite.
Right.
Everyone on the planet's heard of esports. There's definitely been a shift, but there's still not a shift in the corporate space taking gaming seriously. And that's really, like, years ago, I mentioned my best friend was one of the founders of id, and he would tell me, Adrian would say, don't ever tell anyone you work in games. I was like, what? I was like, why not? Because they won't take you seriously.
Wow.
And now I think there's culturally a shift, because the people who are in decision-making positions in the world were gamers. They've been brought up as gamers.
Or their kids are gamers. Or they've seen it. They're seeing it constantly. They're inundated with it. It's just, I don't think those decision makers or the people who are in those corporations still understand what's the tidal wave, the tsunami that's coming. And they're trying to use inundated or outdated models to fit on top of a completely new experience. And you almost said the word earlier, is like, they're not authentic. Right. You can't have a brand that is like trying to get into gaming that has nothing to do with the community, that's not authentic, that's not real, trying to put their stuff into that experience. Because guess what? As gamers, we got the best. We can turn off any information that's not important and focus on what is. It doesn't matter where it's on the screen. Right. And that's really what, when we look at balance, when we're looking at the esports community, and we want to empower them. Like, we want to create better, authentic things. And we're like, what is it that so we looked at it two different ways. How do we improve sponsorships? Like, how can we build technology that allows some better experience that's integrated into the stream? Yeah. It's not a commercial that's abstract, or that's outside of the stream. It's an interactive. So we're delivering it for, like in the Race to the World, we delivered live API fed real-time statistics, player information, race information right to the audience. And at the same time, we also had interactive experiences. It could be simple as polling, or as trivia around the game. And even what we do is we crowdsource AI, machine learning, that does something else. So we empower this community, and ultimately what we want is we want that community to be able to be the crowdsourcing data set generation where they're helping solve a real world problem, and then training medical AI. So that's one of the things we're doing, and we monetize the medical AI in the pharmaceutical industry. And to answer your second point of what they need, is that's a new revenue stream for the team and the community. So we're looking at our technology development as, how do we create additional revenue streams that currently do not exist, so that we're not reliant on software sales or branding sales. So what else can we create from the community that's doing good, that's authentic to the community? Because who doesn't have someone who's died of cancer in their family, or some medical disease? We all do. Right. And that's a sad fact. But a fact all the same. If we can use those engagement hours, those billions of hours, doing that medical and the crowdsourcing those AIs, now that is monetizable to the people who brought those eyeballs. Well, I love that, and this is where I really want to lean in with Balanced, and talk a little about, we were talking earlier, and you said, John, what really got me to start Balanced was, I love esports, I love games, but I wanted to do more. Yeah. And I'll be honest with you, when I was at GameStop, this is nothing against GameStop, but sometimes I was like, is what I do, does it really matter? You know, like, yeah, games are fun and they can be impactful to a point. And I know a lot of people do resonate with, yeah, I spent, you know, my years in this game. But when you're saying like ultimately things that really, really matter, sometimes I was like, I'm just selling video games. Does this ultimately really help people? And so what I love is when you're doing stuff that's fun, that's awesome. When you're doing stuff that's cool, that's great. But when you are doing things that are really impacting people on a human level, and then you can do that within something that you love, like games and esports, I think that's amazing. So why don't you tell us, you know, you teased it a little bit there, but really dive into there to what you guys specifically are doing.
Yeah, I appreciate you telling us how you felt at GameStop. Not bragging on GameStop, but that was your experience. You wanted to do more, right?
It felt cosmetic, ultimately.
Yeah. Well, it's like any of us. At some point, even if you're successful, if you're just making product, that's all it is at the end of the day. Like, great, you made the best game and you made a bunch of money. Awesome. You know, what else? You know, what more is there? You know,
that fulfillment, that deeper, that higher purpose. If
absolutely, man. And we all have that journey that we take, you know, and we get there. And mine was like, I was about to leave the industry about 8 years ago because I was just done with it, man. It was just like this. It's hard to make games. People think it's just fun. Like, we're just sitting around like playing all day, you know. It's like time consuming and life consuming, and like it takes a lot out of you as an artist. I'm emotionally connected to whatever I'm working on. I'm tooled that way. So for me, it's like an emotional thing, you know, and spiritual as well. Like my insides are in that product, and if it sucks or if it's not popular, then that sucks for me because I'm too connected to it, right?
Absolutely.
And so like, and I think that's just how I am, but that's why I wanted to leave, is like because I wanted more. And when I started teaching at the Guildhall, I realized I was like, maybe teaching's the thing, because I was maybe a professor. You know, I could at least sculpt the minds of young people and maybe get them to think about their careers differently in the industry as a whole. And through that process of teaching graduate school there, and an incredible group of kids and cohorts, and I realized I didn't need to leave the industry that I helped create. I needed to empower it. Like I needed to empower it. We can do more. It's not about me. It's like I started getting to looking at it from a bigger lens. This isn't about me. It's about the industry. I started in the industry, 100 million people playing games worldwide in 92. 2.6 billion playing games today. We're spending 1 billion hours a day online. If we don't, as the creators of that industry, and we talked earlier about all the different phases of development and digital downloads to technology development, and mobile, all these advancements, I really genuinely believe the work we're doing at Balanced is laying the groundwork for empowering all gamers to make a difference in the world.
Wow.
Not just passive entertainment, but actually engaging directly in problem solving. Every day we hear about climate change. Why can't climate change research be crowdsourced through gaming? It should be. It's just it's not there. It's not happening on a global scale. There's examples of it. Citizen science.
So how would that work tangibly? How could that happen?
So in a couple of ways. One, just like with computational biology, we can put in data sets that creating variables around a particular action in a game. I'm turning a red block green or blue. What I'm really doing is I'm helping pare down a data set. We've done that with cancer research, for example. Another one is with image recognition or some type of segmentation or labeling of imagery. So there's a lot of images that are generated in the medical space. We need we need to train the AI in order to look at those images and be able to identify certain properties in the image. Same thing with global and climate change. There's all this imagery out there, and they crowdsource this through Mechanical Turk or something, and it's not fun. So the person is just clicking it for a penny a day.
Oh, I see.
What we're saying is we can integrate those types of activities in games so that people are doing those things.
The work becomes enjoyable because it's through a game, essentially.
And people, that's right. And it's not done for a financial benefit of an individual who needs to get a penny a click. It's done because people like us all care about the climate. Like, let's all work on this.
Right.
Like, and so we needed to build a platform, the technology's platform, and we have it in Unreal Engine, Unity Engine, HTML5. We put it on top of Esports.
Yeah.
So while people are engaging, it was the first time we did an Esports event with Complexity. We got Drainey, who's at the time was the number one Madden player in the world.
Yep.
Fantastic young man. He came to Children's Health, and we did an event there. We had him playing with Michael Irvin, the Hall of Fame football player from Dallas.
I actually remember when that I was at GameStop during that. I remember seeing that because I think we were associated with.
Yeah, I think you guys were a sponsor.
Yeah,
you guys absolutely. GameStop was a sponsor through Complexity.
Exactly. Yeah.
And we were able to raise money for children. That's great. And the gaming industry raises hundreds of millions a year for charities.
It's incredible. Well, part of that, just to dive in really quick on that point, is I remember when I was at GameStop, I would get hit up all the time by charities, right? They're like, oh, we found a new email address. Let's hit that guy up, right? And I remember going to our PR, and I was getting a little pushback. And I didn't have the context or the detail. Once again, it's nothing about GameStop. They support so many charities and do such a great job doing it. But my perspective at the time, not understanding the context, I was like, guys, why aren't you supporting this? Like, we've got this person, this person. And he said, John, do you know how many requests we get? All of them.
Yeah.
Because every kid plays video games, and every single one of these kids who's stuck in a bed in a hospital, number one, a lot of times that's all they can do. Number two, that's probably all they would want to do if they were able to do other things as well. And so it just said, we have to be selective, right? We can't help everybody. And that's sad, but we want to focus on the ones we can help. And so I think it's incredible when more groups of people can help, because the people who are currently helping are at capacity a lot of times. They can't help any more people.
Absolutely. So in that event, we were the first time ever an esports, because we had a professional esports guy there playing games with kids. Mm-hmm. It wasn't competitive esports. It was just esports themed in nature. Streaming live, and we put cancer research on top of. So esports and on Twitch, first time ever doing that type of work was done in a real time. So that happened here in Dallas with our tech, and then we took it. We raised the bar when we did Race to World with Complexity, and we had a lot more people engaging. And during that event, I don't remember how many hours were played of the game during commercial breaks. It was like 6 months of research time that was done over the 7 days. Wow. So essentially the crowd in 7 days, and it wasn't great engagement, to be honest, because it was the first time it had, I say great, everyone would have done it, not just a subsection. Yeah. But that's the point, is we as the crowd, we as the people can do this. And there's a great documentary, I think it's called Social Dilemma. Okay. It's about the problems with social media. And all these people are talking. These are professionals who helped create that industry, are all saying, here's all the things that are broken. Right. It's just a big money machine. It's like, we don't care about you. The individuals don't matter. We're doing all this stuff. Like, how do we fix it? Well, only those people who help create that machine ultimately are going to know how to build technology to empower it to do something good. That's the answer for the social media problem. Guess what? It's also the answer for gaming. It's going to take developers in order to build something that empowers their community outside of monetizing them. Right. Yeah. And that's okay. I want to monetize as well. I would rather monetize the pharmaceutical industry or another industry that has a lot more money than gaming industry, and I want to rev share back to the teams. I want to rev share to other developers. I want to rev share to the community themselves. There's so much money out there. It's not a money problem. Yeah. It's a vision problem. We need to build the right technologies that empower these other revenue verticals to come in. And by doing that, then I think you unlock even more authentic relationships with brands. Let me give you an example. If every single corporation, I'm sure your background touches marketing all the time. It is. Yeah. When the economy crashed, back in the 2009 or whatever it
Yep.
was, 2010.
2008,
We
yep.
have to, we lost a lot of people. We're like, okay, we have to reconnect. We have to show our purpose. We have to have value-driven company. Everything is about values
Right.
and what's our cause, right?
Yeah.
They all have a cause. Every major corporation has a cause that they normally put money into.
Sure. Yeah.
If you could also not just put money into that cause, what if you could help solve that problem? Ultimately, whatever it's climate change, for example, or whatever, that's really what technology can do. That's really what the power. It's not a money problem. It's a power. It's a processing problem. A lot of times, like when you look at, Mark Zuckerberg, there's an article out there where he's talking at Chan Zuckerberg. He put $3 billion into researching and trying to build things around the human health and education and whatnot. In his board meeting, he's talking about one of our number one costs is processing.
Right.
Like paying Amazon to process. And one of the issues is just all these supercomputers. Well, guess what? That's fine. You may have access to a supercomputer at university. You're waiting 3 months to get your turn. That's causing these massive delays in discovery. And that's really one of the major problems. Last year, whenever COVID happened, the FDA exposed all of these compound data, and they said, hey, we can figure out which one of these FDA-approved compounds could potentially block the virus from attacking healthy cells. Mm-hmm. Well, Folding at Home, and I think it was one of the hardware accelerator card companies put a call to action to their community. They created the world's largest distributed grid supercomputer overnight.
There's a lot of examples of that, right?
Yeah.
We just put a call out to the community and say, hey guys, and they make it happen.
There's no better equipped and ready community in the world than gamers. That's what we do. Call to action, baby. Let's go. Let's solve this problem.
You're all connected online. Boom. Many hands make light work. Many mice make light work.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It really is about the power of the crowd, and that's really what I believe is the future. Is in the difference between esports and traditional sports is we're not just passively watching something. We can be actively engaged. And that ultimately is going to unlock better brand opportunities. That's going to unlock money. That's going to create new AI, new machine learning models that we can monetize from other communities. We're looking at it through the old lens. If we think esports should be monetized the same way that traditional media has
I love
been.
that, because I think we have a lot of the brightest minds from traditional sports coming into esports.
Absolutely.
Right? League commissioners, Johanna Ferries is one of my favorites. And so we have people who have this experience and they come in. Sometimes they understand it, sometimes they don't, right? But I think a lot of the thinking currently is around, okay, media rights is the number one source of revenue in traditional sports. How do we replicate that in esports? And I think that's the wrong question. I think this is a new thing that requires new solutions, and we need to get our minds together to create something that's never been created.
Absolutely.
And folks like yourself and your team, what you're doing, it sounds like you're working down the path to get there.
Absolutely, you're right. I think that is, you can't innovate if you're thinking about it the same way it's always been.
Right.
And so, and you're not going to connect with a community that feels this kindred connection as family or as the tribe. There's gamers are a tribe. Gamers believe that this is our community. We're guarded. When they do take on something of passion like raising money for children's health or any of the other hundreds of millions annually, that's because gamers are givers.
Right.
I think it's gamers. We just need to empower these people to do something meaningful, and that's really what it's about. And the other exciting thing I'm excited about is this idea of the digital space. The physical space, the facility, and there's like a bunch of companies building physical facilities around to get gamers together. Because I love E3, I love PAX, I love all these places where you can get together with gamers and be part of you're not just behind a computer, you're there with them.
Right.
There's something exciting about that. But that physical space, if you're just thinking about that physical space, that arena the same way that you're thinking about it from the Cowboys' point of view or from some other point of view, it's the same butts and seats. That's a broken model too, man. You may do that.
Right.
But 10,000 people in your physical arena, when you got 1 million people who want to tune into that same event, how do you connect those two audiences together?
How do you create that engagement that goes both ways versus just looking at it? But interaction.
That's right. Those interactive streams. That's where our company's headspace is at. We're thinking about physical spaces where people gather, esports and other venues, and also connecting to them digitally. So those two worlds, and we just went through that, right? The lockdown, pandemic. We're at home. We were forced to watch our concerts from our living room. We were forced to watch things from our home. I think that change is going to ripple forward forever. And we need to have that option, but we need to have technologies that make it more engaging, because we still want to be connected to people.
Right.
It's still awesome to go walk around ACL or an esports and be there too. Like, how do I bridge that gap between those things? I think that's where a lot of that's where a lot of my headspace is too. Is I want to figure that problem out, and that's really what's exciting. You circle back around with the team stuff. Is like, what are some really cool problems? What are the problems? Like, what are the opportunities? And let's find smart thinkers and figure out these things, and then go build it. And that's really what I'm excited about, is trying to develop innovation in these spaces.
I love that. You talk about people getting together and then being remote, being so connected online. Once had a friend say, if there was ever a group of people who didn't need to get together, it would be gamers, because you're connected online, you'll have all the access, you're already communicating that way. But when you think of participation in person, one of the images that comes to mind is E3, right? Is cosplay, participation, attendance. And it just shows to me that we as humans have something inside us that the internet, the digital interaction isn't enough. I think one thing COVID has taught us is that we crave the in-person interaction.
Yeah.
Now, I also think that another thing that COVID taught us was, pre-COVID, you had a lot of events that were exclusive there in the venue, right? You couldn't couldn't see anything outside of the venue. Right. It's just for the people there.
Yep.
And I think a lot of eyes were opened to the broader opportunity of, you still want to attract people in person. You want to have that unique value there, but the reach and also the data, because you can track everything online. When you open that up in a way, and then you enable people to interact like you're talking about, just takes things to the next level, and it's going to be so exciting to watch it happen.
Yeah, and I think we need to think about it. It's more than just selling them more stuff, right?
Right.
It's like, what else can we do? What else can we do to bring value? Our companies, we want to figure out better branding opportunities. I'm all for that, because I think that you have to have those brands to help bring value to the teams. Like you said, that's a real problem for monetization of the teams. If we don't have the teams, guess what? We don't have anything.
You don't have a league.
Yeah, you don't have a league. Like you can't. And so that's super important. We have to solve that problem.
Yeah.
So branding, that branding problem is there, but we also want to make sure that we're bringing value to the community in a really authentic way that allows them to feel even more connected emotionally to their teams and to their. And so I do believe that this is I'm excited about how you could start to connect that purpose-driven in community to connecting it to the business of esports, and start to do something unique that you cannot get in other traditional sports and media. And that's really magic. I think there's a magic thing that's going to happen there, and I hope I'm at the center of it. I hope my company's at the center of it.
I love that. I think you're right. I think what I'm hearing for you is essentially gaming can enable what has never been done before, but to do it, we need to think about things that haven't been done before either.
Right.
Because the solution is not going to be from the past. It's going to be something new that's developed for the future.
That's right, and that's what we're trying to build it balanced. Absolutely.
That's incredible.
And we're not going to be the only ones doing it. I hope that we can get my goal is that other developers and other game companies and even publishers start to see that.
Yeah.
And they get on board, because then it unlocks some of those gates and some of the constraints I think we've seen.
Right. Well, I love it. Before we end here, tell everybody how to get a hold of you or what you want them to know about, so people, when they listen and watch this episode, they can follow up in ways that you'd like.
Yeah, so if you want to learn more about the company and our work, go to bmt.world.
Great.
Like B as in boy, M as in Michael, and T as in Tom, .world. It's not .world.com, it's just .world. And if you want to reach out to me directly, I'm great with that as well. It's Robert at bmt.world. So
fantastic.
Yeah, and I appreciate the time, and it sounds like-minded in the way we're looking at things, and that's what gets me excited, is as you're trailblazing, as you're building things, you want others to be there with you, because it's not fun.
Absolutely.
It's not a fun journey alone.
Right.
And you want to see other, and that to me is what's great about gaming. Even is like, you want to be in a guild, or you want to join. You want your friends to play with you too.
Yeah.
That is really what I see as the shift that's starting to happen. Is we're people who are starting to look at this industry, and who are developers in the industry are looking at it from, we can do more.
I love that. I hope this is the first of many conversations that you and I have. My mind's just going crazy on just a lot of overlap, a lot of complementary things. And also just a call out to anybody listening or watching, that if this is something you want to be part of, or you have a complementary service or skill set to offer what you and Balanced are doing, definitely reach out to Robert. We'd love to help make that connection. So
wonderful.
With that, Robert, thank you so much for joining us today on the DLC Drop podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the DLC Drop podcast. This podcast is part of the Esports Future I Podcast Network and produced by Innovation Media Enterprises. Make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcast channel and leave us a review.